Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon to all participants. Welcome to Department of Fisheries, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, for 18th SinnTech webinar series, the Sustainable Aquaculture. My name is Laila from Universitas Gadjah Mada, and such an honor for me to be a Master of Ceremony in 18th SinnTech webinar series. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the webinar today, we would like to welcome the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Insinyur Jaka Widada, MP, Ph.D., Head of Fisheries Department, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Profesor Dr. Insinyur Alim Isnan Setio, MSc, Profesor Catriona, MacLeod from Universitas of Tasmania, Ms. Indah Istiqomah, SPE, MSc, Ph.D. from Department of Fisheries, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Dr. Desi Putri Handayani, SPE from Department of Fisheries, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, a lecturer in Department of Fisheries, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and also guests and all participants. Before we continue to the next session, please allow me to read today's agenda. First is singing Indonesian National Anthem and Gadjah Mada. Opening speech from Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Presentation from speakers, followed by discussion guided by moderator and closing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as the first agenda, we are going to sing Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya, and Gadjah Mada. To all committed, time is yours. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now we are also pleased to invite the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Insinyur Jaka Widada, MP, Ph.D., to deliver the speech. Mr. Jaka Widada, Ph.D., the opportunity is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. To be honorable here that I can open the speech seminar on sustainable agriculture. We would like, on behalf of Faculty of Agriculture, I would like to say thank you very much for Professor Catriona from Tasmania University and also Dr. Indah Istiqomah from Gadjah Mada University. sustainable aquaculture is, I think, important thing to be discussed here, and hopefully by this seminar we will get the better understanding about the sustainable agriculture, and also I hope this will be give us a new insight related with how to get the sustainable aquaculture. All participants, I also will thank very much that join to this seminar. Okay, thank you very much, and good have a good seminar. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Gadjah Mada, Ph.D., for the opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering the main session. First of all, please allow me to introduce our moderator who will lead the session, Dr. Desi Putri Handayani, SPE. Dr. Desi did her undergraduate, master, and doctoral study at Universitas Gadjah Mada. Currently, Dr. Desi is an active lecturer and researcher in the biochemistry and fish nutrition, microbiology, fish health management, natural product in Department of Fisheries, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Dr. Desi, the opportunity is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laila, for giving me time. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Professor Catriona.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you again.
You too.
Yeah, welcome to the webinar SinnTech in Series 18, the Sustainable Aquaculture. I'm Desi Putri Handayani, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator for today's event. So this webinar is brought to you from Department of Fisheries with a focus on exploring the latest innovation and some practices that support sustainability in aquaculture. And now we are fortunate to have with us Professor Catriona and Dr. Indah, who will share their expertise and insight into cutting-edge technologies and approaches to make aquaculture more sustainable. And before we begin, let me briefly outline the structure of our webinar today. First, we will start the presentation from our expert speakers. And following that, there will be a Q&A session. So all of you participants can ask for your question. And we will wrap up the webinar with some final remarks and reflection. Throughout the event, feel free to submit your question via chat room, and our team will be collecting them for the Q&A session. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speakers, Professor Catriona MacLeod from Tasmania University. She will be presenting on what does it mean when we talk about sustainable aquaculture. Let's give a warm virtual welcome for Professor Catriona. Okay, but before Professor Catriona deliver her speech, I would like to give some short CV from Professor Catriona. Actually, Professor Catriona graduated from a doctoral program in Tasmania University, and her current committee membership is on a Center for Marine Socio-Ecology Steering Committee, and then Storm Bay Project Steering Committee, Darwin Estuary Program Management Task Force, and United Nations FAO Global Sustainable Aquaculture Alliance Partnership as an expert advisor. Okay, Professor Catriona, you will have 45 minutes to deliver your speech. Time is yours.
No worries. Thank you so much, Desi. I will share my... I think somebody's going to have to let me share. It won't let me share at the moment. You need to
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I'll share my screen and we should be good to go if I get back to the beginning. Okay, so thank you very much. And thank you to University of Gadjah Mada for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate it. I have very much enjoyed my time with you recently as part of the summer school and the connections that we made there. And hopefully that will be a long-lasting relationship going forward. So thank you for inviting me to do this. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what I think it means when we talk about sustainable aquaculture. And thank you, Desni, for all of the introduction on the areas that I'm involved with in aquaculture. I cover, at the moment, I'm involved in quite a lot of things from seaweed through to fin fish and everything in between. So let's get going. So what I'll do is I'll run through why aquaculture is so important. What are the impacts of various forms of aquaculture and the opportunities in terms of sustainability? Now, I should probably have done this first, which is what does sustainability mean? But I think it's good to do it here because it gives us a reflection on different forms of sustainability. And then I'll finish up with some particular cases of sustainability, some things where it works well and some things where it's not working quite so well. I will say, if anyone has any trouble hearing, I know I'm talking in English, I have a strange accent. If you have any difficulty hearing me, do not hesitate to let me know, and I'm happy to repeat anything as we go through. But I will happy again to answer any questions at the end of the session. So, in terms of aquaculture and marine resources, what are we talking about there? Well, originally, I think a lot of people would have thought of the fish market and fish in terms of aquaculture. But these days, aquaculture can have a lot of different applications. When we grow fish or shellfish or mollusks or seaweed in aquaculture, the end product can be much more diverse than just fish. And I saw some great innovations when I was in Indonesia with you all recently around opportunities in packaging, cosmetics and nutraceuticals, so many things that we can now use aquaculture species for, and that may adjust our perception of sustainability. I should ask, hands up, how many people eat seafood? I think that's probably a redundant question in the case of most of the people I've met in Indonesia. It's such a prevalent food source. But the big one in that is many more of us are eating seafood now than we used to. This is just a statement from the UN FAO. So not only are we consuming more, but the financial dependence of people around the world on the seafood and seafood production sector has never been more than it is today, whether you've got a platter from Australia or a platter from Southeast Asia, and this particular one's from China. Alongside that, we've got the world's population continuing to grow with the estimates of 10 billion by 2050, which is very significant. That's a significant increase. I'm sure you've all seen the slide, if not this slide, then one very similar before, which is that the world captures fisheries is plateauing. We have pretty much exhausted the capability in there. So for that to be sustainable, we cannot exploit it further. Therefore, if that demand for fish and seafood is to be met, it has to come from aquaculture. And at the moment, the FAO estimate about every second food fish that we eat comes from a farmed fish source. But I think we're going to see an increase in that. The 2030 expectation is that that will be up to 62%. And I think we'll see that rise rapidly. And, you know, all countries around the world are actually looking at how they approach aquaculture in order to deal with that demand. What are some of the concerns about aquaculture? Well, in actual fact, an awful lot of them tend to be environmental concerns. They're worried about the environmental impacts, particularly with finfish and large-scale shellfish production, such as prawns. There's a lot of concern about the nutrient loads that come from that into our coastal systems and the impact that might have on the natural systems within there and their ability to cope with those additional nutrients and assimilate them. And there's, pollution more generally is a bit of a concern, whether that be microplastics and bioplastics or chemicals, which is also on the list, or even genetic issues. You may have heard about some of the issues with respect to Atlantic salmon production in Canada and the US. And a lot of the concerns there are around disease transfer to native populations. So that's a really big concern, particularly with some species, and particularly when species are cultivated in significant densities. It's a big issue in Norway as well, with sea lice, cross contamination of disease and things like sea lice pests from the aquaculture fish to the wild fish and vice versa. There's quite a lot of concern about the animal welfare, so the conditions that the fish or shellfish are held in, and what that might mean. And again, wildlife interaction is a big concern in some places. For example, birds getting entangled in nets, or even things like seals and other animals, not just getting entangled in the nets, but also getting into cages and stealing the fish. And I think that comes through in a lot of other different wildlife interactions. There's been some concerns around human health, particularly where large amounts of antibiotics are used, and that can be a really big issue, given the amount of antibiotic resistance we're seeing. So these are a lot of the sort of concerns that we see in that sort of seafood safety and environmental context. But one of the other ones we've certainly seen a lot in the sort of developed countries is the societal concerns about loss of access to amenity. Now, whether that can be they don't like to see it, they hear the impacted by the noise, there's the lack of access to areas that people had previously been able to access because of the exclusion. That can be, from trivial to really quite significant. And it can end up with quite a significant amount of political push against aquaculture in certain areas. And I've seen that recently in that generally I've found seaweed aquaculture to be very well received around the world. But there was a little bit of an instance recently in France where the was a public pushback against a seaweed development because of the area they were putting it in. This was an area very much used by the local community, and therefore they were very averse to it being taken away from them, the access. So these are all the sort of impacts you can get. But you can see a lot of them really are still focused around the environmental impacts. And so what are they and how do we manage for them? Well, environmental impacts really do depend on what you're growing and where. And to be honest, everything you do can have an impact if we put it in the wrong place and it's poorly managed. So planning is absolutely the key to ensuring that the sustainability of any aquaculture operations. Many of the impacts that you get from aquaculture are not, although I said it's a lot about species specific and where you put it, many of them are actually from just being there. So it's the infrastructure itself and the people working in that area in themselves. So whether you're talking about large cages such as these salmon ones in the top, or whether it's this is mussel rafting or seaweed, once you put that infrastructure in there, you're changing how the environment functions, and that in and of itself will have an impact. In terms of the sort of two main types of in-water aquaculture, we have sort of the additive effects, which is when you have cages of fish or pens of shellfish and you're feeding them, that's when you're actually adding nutrients into the system. That often has quite a different set of impacts that need to be managed differently to what we call extractive farming, which is where the systems are passive within the water column and they're taking nutrients out of it. Nothing's being added. That's what you generally find with seaweed and shellfish. So the two have quite different sets of impacts, and it's usually additive is more of a concern, or generally considered more of a concern. But as I said, scale is one of the really important ones. It's how much of it you're doing and where you're doing it. You know, a few cages in a system are probably much less likely to be a concern than many, many, many cages in taking over the whole waterway, as in this case here. I think this one's in Taiwan, but yes, you can see that sort of impact would be quite considerably different than just a few cages. The other one is to remember that what we're looking at here is a shared space, and this slide just shows, I mapped for one of the areas that we have aquaculture in Tasmania. I got some photos of all of the different ways people interact with that environment and use it other than aquaculture. And these are all the sort of stakeholders you might need to consider communicating with when you're developing an aquaculture system, because these are the people that it will impact upon and will have opinions about what you're doing. So what do we mean by sustainability? I've got here, these are some standard definitions of sustainability. And the reason I've put them all up is they all have a slightly different bent. So the first one is often used, I've seen this used when we're talking about the sustainability of economic growth. So the ability to maintain or support a process continuously over time. So keeping your business going. The next one is perhaps more about environmental focus, the avoidance or depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. That's the sort of global environmental sustainability. The one in the blue at the bottom, sustainability seeks to prevent the depletion of natural physical resources so they will remain available for the long term. That's the societal sustainability. But regardless, they all have the same premise at the center of it, the same basic rationale, that you need to use the resources so that people in the future can continue to rely on them, that you don't do whatever you're doing, it does not have a detrimental effect on the people that come after you, the people in the environment that comes after you. So that's really important. How do we demonstrate sustainability? So we can do that, through external governance. So it can be compliance conditions that are put on it. So that can be, the government can actually force people to report and monitor their effect on the environment, their effect on the community, and that they are economically viable. But it can also be done internally. So that's the sort of certification process where you do self-certification to show that your business is doing the right thing. But it's also important when you're demonstrating sustainability that you're clear about the purpose in that, and that you understand and making it clear to people, you know, what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and why sustainability is important to you. And circularity, you might have heard of the circular economy, that has a big role and an increasingly greater role to play in that. And this is just came out of the ASEAN meeting earlier this year in May, and this is the Indonesian perspective, which is really showing that they consider sustainable aquaculture to be really important, and for all the right reasons. Even this statement, it actually covers that sustainability definition. So, can aquaculture be sustainable? Well, personally, I believe so. I really do believe so, and the World Bank believes so. There are certainly people out there who don't do it as well as they could, but if you do best practice, I genuinely believe it can be sustainable. And not only sustainable, it's a really important aspect and driver behind us managing for climate change and food security globally. So that's sustainability of our food resources going forward. I think it's really important. So the principles that came out through that ASEAN process for sustainable aquaculture, I've got them listed here. They are really good, and Indonesia is one of the partners that is agreeing to this. But I think they stack up really well as the things that we need to do to ensure and promote sustainable development long term. So that fundamental definition of sustainability, I think Indonesia is very well placed to make that happen. And it deals with environmental sustainability, social responsibility, good governance practices and policy to ensure that that's in place, R&D to make sure we keep ahead of the game and we don't slip behind, so we keep understanding the interactions and how best to manage them, and all of this focused into climate change resilience. The other interesting thing about sustainability now in relation to aquaculture production is that it's increasingly not just about your own production systems, it's about the entire value chain. So I've been working a little bit in this recently, and it's not good enough now when you're selling an aquaculture product just to be able to say that what I grew is sustainable and I did it with sustainable practices. You need to be able to show that the whole value chain. So things like your food supplier, if you're feeding your systems, that they've done sustainable practices, that the equipment that you've bought or using is sustainably sourced, that the people you're selling your product to are doing the right thing with it and being sustainable in their practices. This is being supported by mandated legislation around the world, and it could have a really big impact on us because it's no longer just about what we do. We have to be able to demonstrate the trust we have in what everybody around us is doing. So that's a developing area that's going to have a really big impact on sustainability going forward. Why does aquaculture need to be sustainable? Well, fundamentally, because if it's not environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable, so it doesn't focus on people, planet, and profit, then your business won't be sustainable in the long run. You'll only be able to exist for a relatively short time if those elements aren't managed effectively. And we have a responsibility to our community and to our planet to do this well. And even more so these days, people want to see not just that you're demonstrating those elements, but that it's clear in your purpose right up front that they can trust you, that what you're doing is the right thing. How do you know what's sustainable if you're a consumer out there? That can be really challenging. You could, this is some of the certification schemes that you can buy your product that have a tick from these schemes and they tell you it's sustainable. There have been some of these have been called into question recently because these are things companies pay for. I'd say I've worked with a few of them. I certainly work as an advisor with ASC at the moment. The intention is to be good, to do the right thing. But it is something to always watch and hold these accountable. You could talk to the companies themselves. I've got a couple here. This is the Tassie company, and this is from Canada. You could talk to their peak bodies. They could give you assurance that it's sustainable. Or you could rely on government. These are all good ways, but in some places, in some areas, the trust in all of these sources can be challenged. So ultimately, if you want to know what's sustainable, you've actually got to check it out yourself. You've got to convince yourself that you believe that this is the right practices. So what's good management? We talked about management being really critical. So marine spatial planning is quite important. And I know Indonesia is very well progressed in this area. This is in times past, it was really focused on single species in an area. That's challenging because you're really looking at only the outputs and outcomes from one species or one practice. But we know that in most areas, there's multiple uses in there. So we have to start thinking about how the different applications work together. Some might work very well, some might work not so well. If you have an oil spill from an oil rig, that's not going to do very well for your seaweed or your aquaculture practice. And then moving on from that, you actually have to look at not just the other industries in the area, but all of the other ways in which that ecosystem functions. And that's where we're moving to now with ecosystem-based management. And that's probably the most sustainable management systems when you start to go down that. It's not always easy to do it, but you have to step through. And I think we need to know this. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time. Whatever you're doing, it needs to be risk appropriate. So this is why you'll hear me say it's got to manage for the species, for the area, and for the scale. Because the risks in each and every area and for each and every different type of aquaculture may be different. So one of the biggest issues we've had is when a government body applies one set of rules regardless of what you're farming. Because sometimes that will end up making you monitor or manage for things that are irrelevant to what you're doing. It needs to have that risk appropriate. You need to be transparent, so you need to be able to show people that your results are good and that everything is running as intended. And you also need to be adaptive because things change. Things change in your business, things change in the environment. New industry could come into your area, or you could find yourself facing a new disease issue, and that could fundamentally change what you need to do. Or even you could change the production, the product that you want to get out of it, and that can change how you operate. So it needs to be adaptive. I think I've actually covered this one already. I'm sorry, I don't know why that slide's popped in there. So now we're getting to some of those examples of what might be sustainable aquaculture practices. Some of you might have heard of ecological aquaculture or integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. And this is where, as I said earlier, one of the biggest concerns, particularly with finfish or prawn aquaculture, is the nutrients that they provide and put into the system. So this is where you actually manage for that by growing other species alongside that finfish species that take those nutrients up. So it could be sea cucumbers or crabs and shellfish, even mollusks underneath the system, picking up the sediments deposits. It can be mussels or shellfish oysters in the water column to pick up both dissolved nutrients and particulate nutrients. But if you've got IMTA, you really do need to have seaweed in the mix because you need a primary producer, a plant-based species, to manage for those dissolved nutrients. This is a great model. And I was just doing a presentation very recently, since when I was in China, around how it works very, very well in tropical countries, but we've had some issues with it in temperate. And I think I might go on to, yes, I do, to show you why. So the opportunity in IMT is it's an ecosystem approach. It gives you better environmental outcomes because it does that nutrient management aspect. You can get product diversification. So you're now growing 3 things that you can sell rather than 1. So your market opportunity might be greater. Some people feel it reduced production costs. It can have, hopefully, you've got better governance because you're managing for multiple species in an area and streamlined, and you get better market access because of the green credentials, those sustainability credentials. However, the challenges we often face here, in particularly, this is what we found in Europe, Mediterranean, and in Australia. Some of the environmental benefit didn't work because of the seasonal impacts. We have strong seasonality in these systems. So I'll give you the example here in Tasmania, where the seaweed, the best quality seaweed production that we were looking at kelps, was in when you harvested all the seaweed in October, November. But the highest nutrient input from the finfish farm was in February. So you weren't getting the nutrient offset that you aimed to do in the first place because of that seasonal misalignment. It was not easy to integrate the business relationship. The finfish farming was far greater in terms of economy and scale. And so they weren't as receptive to working with the other species. So that's collaboration model. If you did it as a fully integrated model in Ireland and the Mediterranean, we also found challenges there in lining up expectations. The production costs did not go down because we found there were novel processing needs in doing it in this model that made things challenging. The governance didn't get streamlined because there was actually more red tape. We struggled to get the government to see the benefits, and they just added more complexity. And the consumer market acceptance wasn't as strong as we thought, because people were a bit concerned about buying products that were fed on the waste of another species. So that was a very European and Australian focus. I actually think that works much better if you do it in tropical climates, in warmer climates, because you lose the seasonality. The alignment of the business opportunities is usually driven in a slightly different way and is much better. And then all of those other elements line up. And the one thing I'd say I've discovered when I was in Indonesia recently was the support of the government for things like IMTA was significant, and therefore the willingness to reduce that red tape was much greater. Okay, it's definitely something we need to look at. This slide's just talking about the level of coastal eutrophication we have generally, and so the opportunity for things like seaweed farming and IMTA. If we're adding aquaculture to our coastal environments, given most coastal environments are actually increasing relative to global baselines, we need to think about IMTA. We need to think about where the primary production culture is to remove those nutrients. So seaweed is the way to do that, and the demand for seaweed is growing. This is just some metrics I pulled up from various different websites around the world, just showing that the market is really picking up for seaweed, and not just seaweed as a food source, seaweed in so many different ways. There is a lot of opportunity out there. Seaweed is, this was an interesting one. I just talked about the IMTA and how IMTA has that environmental benefit. This was one that I found to be quite challenging, where I was talking with some communities in Southeast Asia, and they're looking to actually add more finfish and more nutrient additive species in order to support the decline in seaweed production, because they weren't getting the viability out of the seaweed that they used to have. I can totally understand why that would be, that you want those additional nutrients, but in many ways that's a recipe for disaster, because now you've got one culture species dependent on another. If that other business fails or doesn't work, then everything fails. You're much better to manage your environmental conditions. So the scale of the seaweed production needs to be consistent with the carrying capacity and sustainability of the environment. So that's a little bit of a concern, but it's so they're not managing nutrients, they're demanding them. I saw this one in Indonesia and I was really impressed with it. So prawn production, I think this slide might not actually be Indonesia, but it was about prawn production and how do we make this more sustainable. And I was just, this is one we were talking about quite a lot in Shanghai and China when I was there recently. That's really hard to do when you have prawn production laid out like that, because anything that manages for the nutrient outputs will be having to be an additive on the coastal margins. But one of the things I saw in the Indonesian reports was the idea that this we have to manage as we deal with it each instance. But new prawn production, if it's done in this sort of setup, you may find it easier to do that, either in you manage for individual ponds, so you have IMTA within the pond, or you set it up like this. And I really like this image, the idea that the IMTA is integrated within the pond. That takes away a lot of the governance issue. It actually takes away a lot of the integrated business issue, because you're managing tank by tank. So the IMTA systems are contained within the tank. And I really like this model. I've yet to see the proof of the concept translated, but I really like that thinking, because I think it takes us back to almost like the individual farm-based thinking about how you manage each pen rather than on the full commercial scale. But yes, I like that. So yes, this is where I knew this, it's in the wrong space. This slide should have been a little bit earlier. So this is the one talking about IMTA under a sort of more tropical model. And the fact that a lot of those challenges I talked about earlier, there are much less challenges under that model because it's not seasonal. it's local farmers within an accepted model of business relationship, so that the business side of it works. You do get better production costs because overall the processing costs are lower. The governance and red tape is gone, and there's much more market acceptability. So you do get the premium price out of it. So that is a much better sustainability model than IMT in those really intensive European style or Western style production systems. Yeah, so that's and doing it well. I think when I look through IMTA, I can see 14 of the 17 SDG Sustainable Development Goals clearly can be addressed, but I actually think you can get the other 3 there, you know, with careful planning. I think we could actually address all of them if we do this well. Circularity in the products, in terms of, that's another road to sustainability. So the traditional one of it's just about exploiting the system and taking what you can. In the circular economy, you're looking at reusing your waste streams. And I think that's something in the seaweed aquaculture, but in most aquacultures, we can do an awful lot better than we have done. Seaweed's a really good example of doing it, I think, and particularly IMTA. But we can do it a lot better. And the global opportunities right now are actually helping us to do that, because there's the expectation. So the zero waste model, the restorative and regenerative aquaculture is much more, there's much more conversation around that now. And I think that's definitely something that we can build upon. In aquaculture, there are many, many ways that the aquaculture can tie into this, both in the production and in optimizing their use of the environment. So other benefits of aquaculture in that circular economy model are that generally lower CO2 emissions from aquaculture. We don't require for a lot of that aquaculture, unless we're looking at large scale cultivation on land, such as prawn ponds. You tend not to use as much, even the prawn ponds in terms of protein production doesn't use as much land as standard terrestrial agriculture. And you certainly don't use freshwater in most of the marine-based systems. And that really, there was a lovely report came out in 2023 that a lot of people haven't really picked up on, but it gives some really good models and guidelines around circular economy and fisheries and aquaculture. This slide's just showing exactly where we fit in there in terms of protein production. This is average greenhouse gas emissions. If you're looking at beef or lamb, it's much higher. Farm crustaceans are less than both, but higher than finfish because of the fact that they're running on land. So you need those production systems, you need the power to run those systems. In terms of freshwater use, this is just showing, you know, these are all freshwater species at the top, and hence they do require freshwater use. But when you start going into prawns and I've got salmon here and seaweed, it massively reduces. So if we can change our dependency, our protein dependency and our food security needs towards aquaculture, you can see the massive benefit we can provide there. And given that production, that increase in the global population, even to maintain our usages of these resources, freshwater and land, at the level they're at now, we're going to need significant aquaculture to manage that. Lots of exciting opportunities for algal culture. That's one of the areas I'm working in quite a lot at the moment. I've already mentioned the waste and the nutrient and the land-based global greenhouse gas and climate ones, but there's so many in there. Using them in food is only a fraction. There's medical applications. Biofuels are really back on the agenda for seaweeds. Biochar fertilizers. I've had a lot of conversations recently about fertilizer not being at the bottom end of the value chain. They can be really quite high end, as can building materials, and I've even seen clothing made out of seaweed and fiber. So lots of opportunity there, but it's all about scale. So this is again a seaweed longline production system. In terms of sustainability from the perspective of environmental sustainability, I think you can see the challenges that would face. So we have to manage for the full balance. This is a phrase I've used with a lot of colleagues. nobody sets out to do it badly, but you've got to be careful what you wish for. There can be a lot of challenges in setting out to do the good thing and having unfortunate negative consequences of that. And one of the things I've got here is, this is about salmon, and you may have heard the debate around feeding things like sardines, 3 kilos of sardines to produce 1 kilo of salmon. And that's, may not be sustainable. And partly that's because people who eat salmon don't want to eat sardines. If they ate sardines, the problem would be solved. But one of the big issues we faced with this was they replaced the feed source for the salmon with terrestrial-based proteins, lupin and various other soy meal. Soy meal is not as well digested by the fish themselves, so it ends up with a bigger waste footprint in the marine system. So you have a bigger environmental consequence. Plus, in many of these systems, you're introducing terrestrial-based nutrients into marine-based systems, and that has flow-on effects to the full ecosystem, many of which we're not aware of. So that's the be careful what you wish for. You may not be able to avoid these things, but that's the adaptive bit. Once you know the consequence, we need to have the mechanism to adapt for it. So these are some of the alternative proteins I was talking about. The other one I wanted to flag as an interesting one is the restorative aquaculture. You may have heard around the Nature Conservancy. There's quite a lot of investment going in at the moment in terms of investing in restoring habitats, ecosystems, and species that are being impacted adversely as a result of climate change. I'm just about done. This is the giant kelp, and we've been doing this in Tasmania and in Australia and helping to support it around the world. It's really suffering as a result of climate change, and so we've got opportunities to reseed that species. Two things that you need to bear in mind there is when we reintroduce the kelp, we may not be actually reintroducing the full ecosystem, because the causes of warming here, the impacts on the kelp, it may be impacting all the other species too, but we're only reintroducing the kelp. So we've got to remind ourselves that we're not necessarily re-establishing the entire ecosystem. We're certainly maybe helping it, but we're not necessarily doing that. And the other one that really worries me is sometimes when people might see this, they think they don't have to fix climate change at the other end. So we can cure the symptom, so they don't feel the need to cure the cause. I can keep doing bad practices elsewhere in the world because we can fix it at the other end. So just bear that in mind when we're talking about long-term sustainability. Restorative aquaculture, this is a really good example I did see in China, which was around the Chinese sturgeon, an amazing fish, where they were actually set up a restorative aquaculture practice that was so successful that they had a commercial offshoot that funded both the restorative aquaculture practices and various other community activities. So it's a good example. Restoration aquaculture does not need to be not an economically sustainable practice. This is a very economically sustainable restorative practice, as is this one, which is culture of prawns and bigmouth bass, I think it is, in China. The solar panels on this power the entire system, as well as a nearby town. Took a coal-fired power station out of circulation. So thinking outside the box and looking at what else we can relate aquaculture to can result in much bigger sustainability benefits. But all in all, it's all about scale, and this scale, species, location, and this is about purpose. They set out at the very beginning to ensure that when they built this system, not only was the activity sustainable, but they would add to the sustainability of the broader environment. So that's the purpose, and that's me. Thank you. I think I'm within time.
Yes.
Sharing.
So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Catriona, for your very insightful presentation. And now we will continue to our next speakers. Dr. Indah. Yeah. Yeah. So Dr. Indah will discuss about the role of microorganism on fish growth and health. And please welcome Dr. Indah. And before Dr. Indah give the presentation, I would like to read the CV, short CV of Dr. Indah. Yeah, Dr. Indah has graduated for doctoral degree in bioresource science in Hiroshima University and her expertise in aquaculture. So please, Dr. Indah, you will have 45 minutes. Time is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Desi, for your introduction about my CV. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to give me opportunity to join all of you here in this very interesting webinar about the sustainable aquaculture. I'm very happy today we have Professor Catriona, who already opened our understanding about sustainable aquaculture in more global aspect, and it is very interesting and very inciting for us that we want to also involve in that development of sustainable aquaculture. So from now on, please let me start my slide about some technical work we already done related with the sustainable aquaculture. Here we will in this presentation, I will concentrate on how to improve the role of microorganism in fish growth and health. Okay, I hope this you can see my slide. Is it clear? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as we know, microorganism is a very important part of the fish pond. They have a very important roles in maintaining the sustainable system in shrimp ponds. This microorganism can reside in any part of the pond, including sediment, water, and also inside the fish body, the surface of the body. And there are a variety of microorganisms, including bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and algae, and also virus, and all of them have many different effect on the fish growth performance and also fish health. The first effect is classified as positive effect, whether the bacteria can help the growth of the fish species in eliminating the toxic materials, degrading of the extra feed in the fish or shrimp pond, and also this microorganism population will be important nutrition for many grazer and also filter feeder organism in the environments. And introduction of this microorganism into the fish body, into the shrimp body also have a positive effect, such as enhancement of the immune system in the fish. However, there are also another deleterious effect or negative effect of this microorganism. For example, they are responsible for disease outbreaks in the shrimp ponds. They also sometimes produce toxic substance, which is very dangerous for our commodity, and also they consume oxygen, so it is very problematic sometimes in the shrimp pond. So here, with these two aspects, with the positive and negative effect, we can say that microorganisms have important roles in maintaining the fish health and also growth. So here, some simple explanation about how the microbial community interact each other in the shrimp ponds. As I previously mentioned, that this microorganism community can be found in the sediment, water, and also in the fish bodies, in the shrimp body. We here this figure demonstrate that all of these microorganisms is interact each other. They communicate each other. For example, the sediment microorganisms can have an effect on the water community microorganism, and another effect from water also affecting the sediment community. This sediment community also have an important effect on the intestinal community, because daily fish and also shrimp ingest water from the environment. So the composition of the microorganisms in the intestine, water, and also sediment, they are interact each other many times. So with these interactions, we can see that there are interaction between fish and microbe in the environments. So if you look at this figure, we can see that fish consists of microbiome, which is living in their intestine, in their gill, and also in their surface of the body, also in other internal organs. And this microbiomes is allowed by the fish species to be touching in their body. Why? Because they provide many benefits for this fish species. Some functional of this microbiome contribute to the performance of this fish itself. For example, this microbiome helping the fish species in protecting them against pathogen, because the microbiome covering the surface of the fish species. So this microbiome protect fish from any pathogen to invade their body. And another effect of this microbiome is enhance the fish tolerance against abiotic stress. In this manner, some microbiome have the releasing stress releasing effect on the fish species, so the fish become more tolerant against abiotic stress, such as temperature and also pH. And another function of this microbiome is also they help the fish to maintain their immune systems. The presence of these microbiomes strongly relate with the improvement of the host immune response. And finally, with all of this effect, by enhancing the immune, protecting the pathogen, and also enhance the stress tolerance, the microbiome also enhance the growth and also development of this species. And however, there is also another factor affecting the shape of the microorganism. For example, the host environments. It means that fish living in such an environment might have such microbiome compositions, and when they move to such other environment, they will have such another microbiome composition. So it means that host environment affect the shape of the microbiomes. Another factor affecting the structure and shape of this microbiome is the host genotype, host fish species genotype. So this same fish species but with different genotype might have a different composition of fish microbiomes. And then the last factor affecting the composition of the fish microbiome inside the fish body is the nutrition acquisitions. It means that a type of diet and just by the fish species might influence the composition of the microbiomes. So from this explanation, we can find that the fish and microbe have a very strong relation, have a very strong interaction each other. Fish can affect the microbiome, and also microbiome can give effect to the fish conditions. So from this explanation, we can find that there is a very important roles of the microbiome and the fish growth performance and in maintaining the fish growth performance. So this is some explanation, general explanation about the microflora of the healthy fish in general. Here, the researcher demonstrate that even in the same inside the fish species, they might have a very different distinctive composition of the microflora in each different organ. For example, in this figure, we can see that some microflora might be different in the fish, in the gill, in the gut, in their intestine, and also in the surface of the body. We can see here that gill of this fish was dominated by Proteobacteria, Firmicutes, Actinobacteria, Cyanobacteria, Ascomycota, and also Basidiomycota. This composition is quite similar with that one already exists in the fish gut, except the presence of chloroflexi and Crenarchaeota. It means that some differences might occur between gill and the guts. And another difference, composition might be found also in the intestine, which is we can find the predominant of 4 different groups. Which is Proteobacteria, Firmicutes, Actinobacteria, and bacteroidetes. And also we can, when look at to the skin of the fish, some difference composition also might appear. So it means that in general, the structure of microflora inside the fish body have some differences with some similarity. So after knowing that the structure of the microorganism is different each other between fish species, we can see what's problem with aquaculture. We can see that when we raise fish in our fish pond, we can see that fish live in artificial environments. The fish is away from their natural environments. Usually they live in a high density and also with a huge amount of feed. And if the consequences, we also found a huge amount of the extra feed and also feces or waste if this fish population is not maintained fully. So with these conditions, this aquaculture condition directly affect the water quality in that system in both chemical, physical, and also biological. And this water quality can also affect the composition of the microbiota in the surface of the fish fish. Yeah. And this imbalance of the microbiota can we call it as dysbiosis. And along with these conditions, because of the water quality and also the high density, this condition will affect the stress condition into the fish. So here we can see that aquaculture fish species have some stress which can affect the dysbiosis or imbalance in their microbiomes. The next slides demonstrate how dysbiosis or change in the composition of the microbiome exists in aquaculture fish species. Here we some research done by Ramirez and Romero in 2017. They compare the composition of the microorganisms in the surface of the body between wild fish and aquaculture fish. They found some difference in their abundance, some alpha diversity differences between wild fish species and also aquaculture fish species. And this is the explanation how they differ each other. In this figure, we show the similarity among bacterial community associated with fish species with living in well environment and living in aquaculture fish species by using physical coordinate analysis. The blue color is wild fish species, and red color is culture fish species. From here, we can find that both wild and aquaculture have exactly different bacterial profiles. It means that something happened during the farming condition. So it's mean that that farming condition might have some things that affect the population of the microorganism associated with the fish body, and this likely relate with the high sensitivity of our fish farming species with the outbreak of the disease. So this is a more clear explanation in the film level of the microbiota composition between wild fish species and culture fish species. We can see that almost all of this replication of this species in each group, we can see that the composition of the microbiota is quite different each other. We can see, for example, the blue bar, which is beta proteobacteria, can be found very in huge amounts in culture fish species, but it is lack in normal environments. It means that something happened during fish farming conditions. So how to support our fish in pond? Now we found that this microbiome profile is changed during the culture. So what we can do? First of all, we can perform total management in fish pond to make sure that our conditions provide that we provide enough condition, a good condition to maintain our fish species that grow as they live in the environment. We can start by proper feeding management. We can do another effort by using water quality management, and also we can improve the fish health status by using many modifications such as selection of selected fish species, selected genotype species, and also we can enhance some immunomodulator. But related with the microbiome profile, so we here we can notice that because their microbiome profile is changed during the cultural period. So what we can do is we try to recover how to recover the microbiomes to be similar as their microbiome in the environments. So to recover this microbiome, I think here we have to approach. First of all, we can modify the microbiome inside their fish body. The second is we modify the microbiome inside the water on the sediments. To perform this modification, we can at least use these two approaches. First is using probiotic. Probiotic is living bacteria. So we put bacteria into the fish body, or we put bacteria into the water, that hoping that addition of this probiotic will make some change on the microbiome, recovering of the microbiomes, growing to similar to the normal ones. And another approach is adding of prebiotic. Prebiotic is food for the microbes. It means that we don't add microbes, but we add food for the microbes. We nurture the microbe. We nurture the normal microbe inside the fish body, also inside in the water, also in the sediment. So I think by using this two approach, by using prebiotic, also probiotic, we can try to have a more better microbiome profile of the fish farming inside our fish farming, and then hoping that our fish condition will be much more better. So this is some figure explaining how probiotic can work. So if we add probiotic into the water, the probiotic can compete with the pathogenic bacteria. So they will inhibit the growth of the pathogenic bacteria. So it will provide a more healthy environment for our shrimp or our fish species. And by application of this probiotic into the feed, so it means that this probiotic will be ingested by the fish or shrimp, and it will enhance the immune system and also enhance the digestive system, and also finally will enhance the shrimp growth. And concern about the probiotic is because we add something into this environment, we might be consider about some possible negative impact. So to reduce the negative impact, we have to one of the solution by the selecting probiotic as the resident microorganism. It means that if you want to put the probiotic into the shrimp pond, please we collect the natural probiotic from that shrimp pond, we isolate and we grow inside our laboratory and we return to this pond. So it means that this practice will reduce the ecological problems and also will maintain or also enhance the adaptation ability. So this is some desirable trait of the probiotic strain, which is if we want to select the probiotic, at least this is some criteria to select. If we have many candidates, we can select according to this criteria. First is this probiotic do not produce toxin, because toxin is very dangerous. The second is this probiotic have enzyme activity that will help enhance the digestion system and also helping us in digest the organic substance and also waste inside the water. And also, if the probiotic have antimicrobial properties, will be very much appreciated, because this property will helping us in fish farming to reduce the presence of pathogenic bacteria. And another preference is that they have a specific pathogen. So it means that it works specific against a specific pathogen. So it is very challenging. And then they don't have a virulence factor or antibiotic resistant gene, which is possibly can be transferred into other fish species, so other bacterial species. So it means that our probiotics should not have virulent gene or also antibiotic resistant genes. And we have to make sure that our probiotic is safe from our fish species, safe for our environments. They have ability to survive inside the fish intestine and also tolerate to the condition of the host immune system. And this is some example on the application of probiotics. how the probiotic can modulate the microbiome, gut microbiome in the oyster. This is research done by Taki in 2020. In this research, they try to compare between probiotic application with the control. They apply in various different environment conditions in oyster farmings. We can see here from treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 3, 4, and so on. We can see that composition of the microbiome is quite different between control and probiotic treated ones. It means that this probiotic have ability to modulate the composition of the microbiomes. Even we have only one probiotic products here, we can see that addition of one species can enhance the change of the composition of other microorganism population. It means that this probiotic does not dominate, but they control how the composition of the microbiome inside his body. And this is another explanation how to show that the diversity structure is quite different between probiotic treatment groups and also control group in 8 different trials. We can see here that in almost all trials, especially in trial 1 to trial 1, trial 2, and trial 3, we can see the clear differences in the composition of the microbiomes between probiotic treated group and also non-probiotic treatment group. But here we can see that in trial 7, there are very much clear differences between probiotic and non-probiotics. Here, another example of probiotic application in fish species, in Caspian whitefish species fingerling. They compare 3 different probiotic products and they observe the composition of this bacteria in the intestine of the fish species. In the left side is in the number of total bacteria inside the intestine. We can see here that administration of the probiotic enhanced the total number of the bacteria. And the right side is the total number of lactic acid bacteria. So here it's clearly can be found that application of probiotic, fetal cell probiotic, fit plus prim probiotic, and primalac probiotic enhance the population of lactic acid bacteria inside the intestine of Rutilus presicutum, fed with different type of probiotic for 45 days. And this is a figure, table demonstrating the effect of this 3 different probiotic product in enhancing the fish growth performance. We can see, maybe we can look at from the final body weights between control and with 3 different probiotic product. We can see that all the probiotic product significantly enhance the final body weights. They also improve along with the enhancement of this fish body weights, this probiotic treatment also reduce the feed conversion ratio. And the second table demonstrate how the probiotic enhance the enzymatic activity inside the intestine of the fish species, especially on alpha amylase activity, alkaline phosphatase activity, and also lipase activity. So, however, we have to consider that probiotic application have some problem. For example, sometimes they have a low efficacy. Why? Because this probiotic should be administered to the fish farm as the live organism. So sometimes we have a problem in transportation, problem in storage that produce the low survival rate and also low adaptation ability of the bacteria. So when we put the bacteria, the efficacy is low, or sometimes they don't have any efficacy. So it means that the efficacy of probiotic can sometimes is not stable. So probiotic sometimes is not preferable to choose in our shrimp farming. And the second is the problem related with fuel culture preparation and maintenance. We know that this probiotic should be prepared as a leaf culture. So if we culture this probiotic not properly, so contaminant might occur, and then it will make some problem in the seafood security issues. So with that problem, so I think another option, a prebiotic is very interesting approach, because prebiotic is not bacteria, but this is the food for the bacteria. These compounds can enhance the fish health by improving the gut microflora and also enhance the immune systems. So this prebiotic is very eco-friendly practice. And there are some requirements to choose the prebiotic. For example, the resistant to the digestion system, we have to choose the prebiotic have a stable structure in acid condition, because they will pass through the intestine, and we want this prebiotic will work in the gut and also in the intestine, so it have to be resist against acid condition in the stomach. And then they should have selective stimulation of beneficial bacteria and also fermentability. And also finally, they should have ability to promote the gut health and immune functions, and should not be toxic materials, because toxic material might danger to our fish species. And they should have ability to improve nutrient absorption and also growth. And they should have a stable in feed and water. And finally, they should be resist to environment condition and also not disrupting to the aquatic ecosystem. And lastly, they should have a cost effective and easy to apply. But I think the requirement number 9 and 10 is, I think, very easy to fulfill. And this is some common prebiotic used for aquaculture. We can select mannan oligosaccharida, or fructo oligosaccharida, or galacto oligosaccharide, and also inulin. This 4 type of prebiotic is very common and very much easy to find in the market. Almost all of them are derived from the plant, especially inulin and phos. But the mannan oligosaccharide usually can be found in yeast and also in other sources. So regarding the prebiotic, this is some example how prebiotic application in Asian sea bass helping them to enhance their immune systems. So in this research, they apply the prebiotic, one type of probiotics, which is as Arabidopilus meal prebiotic, Fermacto, it is a commercial products. They administer as 0.2% and 0.3%. And here the effect of this prebiotic applications, we add this prebiotic into the fish feed, and we observe the number of unique microbiota between sample. So we can see that between control and probiotic treatment have some similar profile of the microbiota, but there are some difference. Some other microbiota only found in prebiotic treatment group, and it cannot be found in control groups. And if you look at more detail on the phylum level, we can
So maybe Indah has some trouble with her signal. Yeah.
Sorry, Mbak Desi and all participants for internet connection in my place. Okay, I will continue my slides. So we can see from this slide that there is some differences in the composition of the microbiome profiles between prebiotic treatment group and control groups. We can see that in the probiotic groups have a domination of actinobacteria more than that one in the probiotic treatment group. So it means that this prebiotic application can have ability to arrange the different composition of the microbiota inside the fish body. And this is some explanation on how about the immune gene expression inside the fish body after the prebiotic applications. There are some differences in immune expression profile, for example, in tumor necrotic factor and also interferons gamma 1s. It can be clearly distinguished between control and prebiotic treatment groups. And some interesting fact we can see here that after artificial infection with the virus, we can see that prebiotic treatment group have a strong expressions profile of MX gene, like important gene for immune system against virus infection. So it means that prebiotic have a immunomodulatory effect on inside the fish body. And this is some immune parameter. We can see here respiratory burst activity, phagocytic activity, and also superoxide dismutase and also lysozyme activity is clearly enhanced after prebiotic treatment inside the fish diet. And although we can find some modification on the fish gut compositions microflora, and also we can find the different expression profile of immune gene and also different level of immune parameters. Still, however, we in this fish species we cannot find any significant enhancement of fish growth performance. It means that sometimes the prebiotic application can modify the gut microbiome, but it doesn't work to enhance the fish growth. But here we can see that even they don't enhance the growth, they enhance the immune system. So I think this is also important outcomes that we can have from prebiotics. And look at to this figure. This is some explanation how the prebiotic and probiotic can helping us to enhance the immune system and also growth performance of our aquaculture species. Here is the shrimp. So actually, the application of prebiotic and probiotic can be combined each other. We call it a symbiotic, and also another approach to enhance the immune system, to enhance the microbiota inside the gut and also enhance their growth. We also can use paraprobiotic is a non-viable bacterial cell, or we can use bioactive substance from that bacteria. We call it as postbiotic. So according to this idea, let me show you some result of experiment done by Fitri et al. In 2024. In this research, they apply prebiotics and probiotic and also symbiotic in tilapia for 2 months of applications. In this research, they use inulin and also they use 2 types of probiotic mixture of bacillus and lactococcus. So here they use 3 treatment with 3 replications. And this is the result of these experiments regarding the composition of the bacteria inside the intestine. This is the phylum of the bacteria, composition of the bacterial phylum inside the fish intestine after application of prebiotic, probiotic, and symbiotics. We can see here some differences after application of these 3 different agents. First of all, we can look at the control, which is the left ones. In control group, we can see the population of proteobacteria, fusobacteria, bacteriodota, and actinobacteriota. But after application of probiotic, we can see the existence of firmicutes. So it means that this firmicutes is enhancing, the species population is enhancing due to the probiotic application. And also, along with that, it's also followed by the enhanced the population of actinobacteria. But if we only put prebiotic, some differences can be found. For example, the number of proteobacteria is still stable, but the number of fusobacteria is enhancing. And then if we combine the prebiotic and probiotic together, we will find another composition of microbiota. We found the stable amount of proteobacteria, a little bit enhanced in the fusobacteriota composition, and also enhancement in actinobacteria population. And most interestingly, we can find the presence of cyanobacteria in the symbiotic treatment. It means that between prebiotic, probiotic, and symbiotic might have a different effect in maintaining the composition of microbiota inside the fish body. This is another figure to explain the composition in another level. Previously, we observed in phylum level, then we look at on the phylum and also in the genus level. Some differences also can be clearly, some evidence of differences in the composition of the microbiome also can be clearly identified. For example, in the left side, we can see that administration of probiotic enhance the population of Staphylococcus, Staphylococcaceae, but application of prebiotic enhance the population of Fibrionaceae and also Fusobacteriaceae. So it is a different response can be found, and complement application of the prebiotic and prebiotic will produce a different composition of the microbia. Similar pattern also can be found in the genus level, where the control group was dominated by Bradyrhizobium and also Cetobacterium, but in the prebiotic group was can be found the enhancement of the population of Enterovibrio, while in probiotic group we can find the clear enhancement amount of Corynebacteria, and also different pattern can be found in symbiotic group. We can find the enhancement of population of Mycobacterium. So it means that here we can see that compared to the control, application of probiotic promote the dominance of fermentative bacteria, especially Cetobacterium, as well as another environment bacteria such as Enterobacteria and Spingomonas. But single application of probiotics enhance the population of Staphylococcus and Corynebacterium, which are involved in protecting against the pathogen and maintaining intestinal immune health. And another condition can be found in symbiotic treatment group. We can find the enhancement of the fermentative bacteria, which is Bradyrhizobium, and as well as another organic compounds decomposing bacteria. With this differences in the microbial population in the fish gut, we can see that we can also some differences in fish growth, fish specific growth rates. We can see here that prebiotics significantly enhance the growth performance of this fish species. When we combine the prebiotic and probiotic, which is symbiotic, the growth performance will be significantly enhanced. It means that this prebiotic have ability to enhance the microbiome and finally enhance the fish growth performance. This also some another demonstration about the growth performance. Here is fish absolute growth. You can see significant enhancement in fish growth with application of prebiotic and also symbiotic. And this is the result of survival rate. We can find here that a prebiotic treatment provide the highest fish survival rate compared with another treatments. And some interesting point here is the probiotic application only produce lower survival rate compared to controls. So from that phenomenon, we can clearly demonstrate, we can clearly understand how the prebiotic can work in supporting the growth of the species. So by administering the prebiotic, we can enhance the balance of the microbiota inside the fish intestine, and then the enhancement of this fish microbial in the fish intestine will enhance the immune system, so it will affect the fish growth performance, enhance the immune response, and also enhance the nutrient absorption, and then finally enhance the fish growth performance. So to summarize, we can say here that microorganisms interact directly into the fish species, supporting their life in the natural environment. So when we culture fish in our aquaculture pond, we can add prebiotic, which is play a significant role in promoting sustainable aquaculture by enhancing fish health, reducing environmental impact. As a natural feed additive, a probiotic fosters the growth of beneficial microorganisms in the fish gut, and it leading to the improvement of the digestion, nutrient absorption, and also overall immunity. So this reduces the need for antibiotic and synthetic chemical, which is not environmental friendly. Thank you very much for your attention. I return this share to the moderator. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Indah, for a very interesting presentation. And now I will open for the Q&A session. Actually, we already have a lot of questions for Professor Catriona and also for Dr. Indah. But I would like to... Okay, there is a question for you, Prof. Catriona, a lot of questions. Yeah, the first question is from Mrs. Kurniati from Umrah. She have a question. We often hear about the high dependency on fish meal for aquafeed. You mentioned before that we are using 3 kg of sardines to produce 1 kg of salmon. Could you elaborate on the long-term sustainability challenges of this fish meal dependency for aquaculture?
Yep. No, it's a great question, and it's a very significant issue. So a lot of that came about. So there's a very sustainable fishery for anchoveta and anchovies and sardines. But as you saw earlier on, all of our fisheries have limits to them. So that it's a sustainable fishery, but it's capped. So if we're looking to put this into fish meal for salmon diets or any fish diet, there's only, even if we continue to use it, there's only so much we can do. So there's only so much you can produce. So there's been a lot of effort put into finding alternatives to the fish meal. I think in some cases that feed conversion ratio that I gave, I was saying ballpark 3 to 1. I think it can be much better than that. They can get it down to considerably less than that, but it's still it's a challenge. And everybody agrees that fish meal is it's almost the best protein source for feeding in fish, whether that's anchoveta or another fish protein source. It is the best thing for growth. You get better feed conversion ratios on the fin fish production if you're feeding them, particularly, it's a carnivorous fin fish. You feeding them other fin fish. That's what they're designed to eat. But it's a big challenge in terms of that's not sustainable long term. The point I was trying to get to in amongst all that is there isn't a right or wrong about what you substitute that fish meal with, but you just have to be aware of the consequences of the change that you're making. And I think that's the big one. A lot of people were saying, oh, we just give them plant protein and then it'll be all fixed. But what they're not understanding is that if you give them plant protein, the fish don't perform as well on that as they do on the fish protein, because that's what they're designed to work on. And they can still grow. They can still grow quite effectively, but there will be a consequence that they don't get the same performance. But also alongside that, the wastage because of the digestibility of the plant-based protein is greater. So you're now trading off the sustainability issues around the anchoveta and the sardine fishery, thinking that's a more sustainable choice. Now we're saying, well, actually, when you do that, the consequence is you will have a bigger environmental impact footprint in the environment that you've got the fish. And that some of that environmental impact we don't actually understand, because we're now putting the plant-based proteins and nutrients straight into marine systems, and we really don't understand the consequence of that. Are we messing with food webs that we don't even know? I still think the but if you want to grow more of those fed finfish, that type of fed finfish, you have to find an alternative to the sardines and the anchoveta, or at least something that can diminish your dependency on it. But be aware that the consequence might not be what you're expecting, and you might have to, and that's my bit about everything's got to be adaptive. You've got to be prepared for the unexpected consequence of what you're doing in one set of actions to increase sustainability. There could be other consequences. And we see that all the time. And I think in management, if you're too rigid around what you do, then you're setting yourself up to fail. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Catriona, for your answer. And I would like to tell you about another question from Mr. Firman. Could you explain how sustainable aquaculture impacts to market access related to green credential, and how does this apply specifically in Indonesia? What obstacle might we encounter when transitioning to sustainable practices, and how can we overcome them?
Okay, so you're talking about what are the benefits in market access and where might the challenges be? Okay, so that really needs clarity around your market assessment, I think. So what are the expectations? So in some ways, it really is, does your market have a demand for more sustainable product, in which case you can attract a premium. A good example of that was some of the fish produced in Europe. They discovered that badging the fish as organic could give you almost double the price point. But the only places, there was only one farm ever was managed, maybe two, I think there might have been two. There was one in Ireland and one somewhere else that ever managed to really attain that, because there's a lot of effort in going to that higher organic standard. And there were only certain markets had you needed a quantum of people that were willing to pay for your product. And only certain markets had it. I think that in this case, the organic markets, they were selling it into Paris and Geneva, maybe London as well. So you couldn't just sell it to anyone because they wouldn't pay the premium. They just didn't have the wherewithal. It wasn't there. So you had to get those special. So there's a lot of, if you're going for a particular market component, you're actually having to develop. One, you've got to know the market's there, and then you've got to develop it yourself. And that actually comes at a cost. But in some cases, one of the other things I was talking about is the community will force that sustainability on you anyway, because the governance model is going to require it. So that was where I was saying there's legislation coming in the US, in Europe, it's in New Zealand already, it started in Australia this year, that requires anybody who's buying the product to demonstrate that they have a certain level of sustainability. So they will not buy from people who haven't got it. So those people will drop out of the supply line, and all of the people that have those, that can demonstrate those sustainability credentials, will be able to access the market. It's challenging. It's a juggling. And the other one I do want to point out is there's this view that you have to have the credentials to show you're sustainable. There are many people who farm very sustainably, but they haven't got any particular certification or badge or credentials. They just go ahead and do good practices anyway. They just, if you want to be able to differentiate yourself, you need that market. It's really hard. You're looking all the time, constantly juggling between market demand and the fact that you have to build the market yourself, show people why you're different, why they should have to buy your product, what your product makes it stand out. Hopefully that's answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Catriona, but we still have another question from Mrs. Ika. Actually, in Central Java, IMTA consists of milkfish and then white shrimp. seaweed, and also mussel. We found that this kind of IMTA are able to reduce the coastal erosion due to native water ponds. But would you like to kindly share your thought about the sustainability of this kind of aquaculture practice?
Yeah. No, so as I said, I think it works really well in the systems I've seen in Southeast Asia and in a number of places. If you can get it, and I think what you've got there is you understand why you're doing IMTA. It's not just about profit. There's a whole range of things. So if you heard me say, knowing your purpose in why you're doing it will mean that you set yourself up to do it for the right reasons and do it well. So IMTA really at the heart of it is something that is environmentally more sustainable. And you're talking about the coastal erosion, managing for the interaction of those species so that they support each other. There's not one stripping from another. There's not one's got primacy. They're all working together very effectively as a united model. That as a purpose will set you up for success. So well done. I think that's a great model.
Okay, thank you. But there is some question from Jessica. Considering the complexity of marine ecosystem, how can managers ensure that ecosystem-based management practices stay adaptive, particularly when managing multiple species or sectors? Also, what metrics are used to measure the success of these adaptive strategies over time?
Okay, difficult question, complex question. How do you manage? So one, you have to be not just adaptive in your practices, you have to be adaptive in your thinking. So to ensure that you're doing good ecosystem-based management, you have to be engaging with all of those different stakeholders on a regular basis in terms of what they're doing now. But you also have to have that, you need a crystal ball, that forward vision that says, what's going to change in the system going forward? So I'm a firm believer that you need to have an ongoing conversation. If you're talking about being a government or a management agency, you've got to have an ongoing conversation with your industry, your community, and the science and research community who will tell you what's the next big thing that's coming your way. So you can be adaptive to all of those things thinking forward. And the other one is don't be afraid to get it wrong, admit you've got it wrong and change things, because that will happen. We will make, for exactly the reasons we thought we'd covered everything, but something was there that we hadn't picked up on or we didn't know about. And I think that's a big feeling we have in science and management all the way through is it's not easy to admit you were wrong or you missed something. And they'll often hold you accountable for that. And it's in the blame game starts. But if we can do it most effectively is when everybody's willing to say, actually, and really talk through what are the likely consequences, the risks. And then if we have got it wrong, how are we going to fix it? And not a case of blaming people in amongst that. You talked about the measurements. There's a huge science discipline working just on that. So ecosystem services evaluation and how we put metrics alongside these things so we can understand the trade-offs and consequences. I did a project which was specifically around some of the stuff we measure as scientists. We'll measure ammonia levels, nitrogen levels, redox and pH levels. Most of your community and most of even many of your farmers won't understand how those scientific measures relate to the things that they care about and are interested in the environment. So there's another whole conversation around how do we turn what we measure into helping people understand how we're looking out for their interests. It's challenging. It's very challenging. But if you've got students or kids, this is an area that's got masses of opportunity for them.
Yes, but there's a question also. How can we determine whether an aquaculture company has implemented sustainable practices for a long time, Prof. Catriona?
Okay, so that's the one where I maybe skipped over it a bit too fast in the presentation, but that's where there are various ways you can do it. You can trust on what the aquaculture company itself says. So if they've got a sustainability report, and that's one of the governance structures that's coming in worldwide now, if they've got that, it might say in there what they've done and whether they're good. If they've got a certification, so lots of people have the tick from an independent certifying authority that says they have sustainable practices. In many places, if you actually look at what the government requires you to do in terms of monitoring, people always forget this little bit. Many government agencies have very good environmental monitoring, and if they are compliant with their government expectations, that too can really help you understand, yes, it's doing it something. That's often not something that's badged really clearly from the company. But ultimately, if you really, really want to know, you have to dig deep yourself for many companies to actually take the time to look at what they do and how they're measuring it and what their results are and understand what those mean. It's not always easy. It's not always, but as I said, just because somebody doesn't have a tick in the box from a certification group does not mean that they're not doing good practices. It may just mean they don't have the money to pay for those certification schemes. They don't have the money to produce a flash report. In those cases, you often just go and talk to the farmer. You know, I do it locally. I buy a lot of my vegetables from local farmers. They're not big certified companies or whatever, but I've talked to the farmer and I feel he understands what he's doing and he does it well. And so I trust him. It's all about trust.
Yeah, so you previously mentioned the role of seaweed in promoting the circular economic concept. Could you elaborate on how seaweed cultivation contributes to the implementation of a circular economy, Prof. Catriona?
Oh, okay. I'll give you, there's so many good examples in this space. So, seaweed, if you turn it into bioplastics, that gets rid of some really difficult issues for a lot of the fish producers, maybe less so in Indonesia, where you tend to buy your fish directly and fresh, so you pick up a whole fish. But in many of the sort of Western systems, they go to a supermarket and they buy it and it's wrapped in plastic. So we can get rid of plastic if you're growing seaweed as part of that IMTA model or within the system. You can get rid of plastic, or the other one they have is quite a lot of the moisture content pieces within it. So moisture management within packaging. So seaweed can come into that. In seaweed's a lovely example because I find, you know, you might grow seaweed. I'll give you, there's a company in Australia and it grows seaweed out of the waste nutrient supply of the largest flour mill in Australia. And they use that water and that nutrients and they grow seaweed. And the highest value seaweed product they produce is about $2,000 to $3,000 per 100 grams. I'll let that sink it. That's really expensive, really expensive. And that's for high-end medical application. It's for drugs and for some burn dressings, wound dressings, very expensive. They also run it through everything in between cosmetics. It goes as an additive to cosmetics. It goes into the flour from the mill that they take the water from. It produces pasta, noodles. They put it into the noodles and green noodles. The very lowest level and poorest quality goes into some fertilizer. So there is absolutely no wastage. They use every part of the seaweed and back in. And so that's the value in the circular economy. And we see it in aquaculture now. We've got a lot of companies. They used to just, again, it's very different in Indonesia where a lot of your fish, the milkfish, the tilapia, you're selling whole fish. But a lot of places in the Western side of things, they sell fillets or part of the fish. So you've got all that left over in the frames, the heads, the skin, And so they're now looking to extract collagen from the skin, calcium from the frames. And what was once the waste material is now a high value product. And they either do that within the company or they're working with other people who come in and do that from multiple farms. So if we can get that thinking and people excited about that as a prospect, that's where you build the circular economy.
Okay, this is last question for you. Actually,
Okay, cool.
in Sulawesi, yeah, we conducted research on IMTA, culture with lobster, shellfish, and also seaweed. We asked for advice from Professor Catriona what parameters are important and how to measure direct and indirect correlation.
Oh, wow. That's quite a detailed question with a lot of bits in it. I wonder, is that Yusnani?
Yeah,
From Olio?
Yusnani.
Yeah, Yusnani, I think that one is quite specific to your particular production model. If you wanted to send me an email, I'm happy to talk through some of that with you, because I think it depends where your focus is coming on. It's the sustainability of the production measures or the environmental sustainability. So in interest of time, I think maybe if you send me a direct email, I'm very happy to answer that for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor.
No worries.
Yeah. So we will move to another question for Dr. Indah. Dr. Indah, there is a question from Gerson Luis. Could the application of probiotics and prebiotics in aquaculture lead to the emergence of new issues, particularly in the fact of some diseases have developed resistance to drugs because of irresponsible use?
Thank you so much, Bu Desi. Maybe I will answer these questions. They ask about the possible problems occur to the probiotic or prebiotic applications. Okay, first of all, about the probiotics, maybe some negative effect might occur during after a probiotic application. For example, if we cannot properly justify that this probiotic is totally safe. You know, sometimes probiotic is very easy to be reculture by fish farmer itself. So sometimes during the culture conditions, some another bacteria can grow, and it means that this another bacteria, we don't know the quality, we don't know their characteristics. So there might be some problematic to our fish farming conditions. And I think if we have a commercial probiotic product, I'm very much sure that this probiotic is already confirmed in all aspects relating with their potential effect in the future. For example, does they contain antimicrobial substance? Does they contain antibiotic resistant gene and etc. All I think all commercial probiotic products should pass through this screening. So it means that actually the bacteria is already safe. Yeah, but some contamination might occur, and then they will develop another problems. And then another factor is this our very safe bacterial strain might interact with other bacteria in the environment. So maybe some another plasmid from another pathogenic bacteria enter our bacteria, enter to this probiotic cells, and then a new disease occurs. This is caused by this probiotic because they capture another plasmid from pathogenic bacteria. So I think the probiotic application is very much need our considerations because we spread living organisms into the water. So I think it's need very much precautions in administrations. And then not the effect of prebiotic. Prebiotic is just inactive materials have nutrition value for the bacteria. So it can enhance the development of good bacteria. But in another side, they also have a potential to grow pathogenic bacteria already in the water. We put prebiotic and this pathogenic also develops, also occur. It means that this both application have some possible negative consequences.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Indah. But also there is another question from Elreda. In your experiences, what are the microbiota in the digestive tract of fish that have great potential to be developed so that a fish growth, especially in swamp water fish, can be optimized?
Okay, thank you so much. So I don't have experience in swamp water fish, but along with our experience in eel, in eel we have some potential probiotic candidate which is come from the Bacillus species and also Lactococcus species. We already examined that efficacy in improving the growth performance of eel juveniles. So I think that at least these two probiotic candidate is very promising to use in eel farmings.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Indah. But we still have last question from Firma Vika. Actually, a prebiotic will be used by a probiotic in the intestinal tract of the fish, but is it possible the pathogen also use the prebiotic as their nutrient, Dr. Indah?
Yes, yeah. It's correct, Firma. So the application of prebiotic might also promote the growth or pathogenic bacteria. So I think this is one another consideration that how we select the proper prebiotic. I think it's better to have a very specific prebiotic, which is very specific relevance to only specific bacterial strain. So to reduce the possibility to develop growth of the pathogenic bacteria.
Okay. Oh, yeah. One question more for Dr. Indah. Mr. Noor have noticed that after applying probiotic in the fish tank, the water become muddy. Is it normal, or do you have an explanation for this, Dr. Indah?
I don't have idea because we don't have such kind of experience. Usually when we introduce probiotic into the water, I think this might be conditioned because they put on the water. We usually use in the concentration in less than 10 to the power 6. So muddy condition we never found. I think if you found directly found the muddy condition may be related with the too high amount of the bacteria. So this bacterial solution spreading on the water or another factor. I'm not sure, but if the muddy condition is about the 24 hours after application, maybe this is related with the mortality of the bacterial strain. Because okay. Sometimes our bacteria cannot survive into the fish tank, and then after 24 hours we can find many organics related with the mortality of the bacteria. But we have to check to make sure what happened about it.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Indah. But there is new question. We still have 2 minutes left. Probably can probiotic bacteria produce toxins that are harmful to organism, Dr. Indah?
Thank you so much. So I think probiotic have a very strict selection step. One of these very important criteria, if they don't produce toxin, even they don't have a toxin producing gene, and also they don't produce toxin. So this bacteria already confirmed on their molecular level and genetic level that they don't have potential to produce toxin itself. So I think that they don't have a potential to produce toxin, but if we put the bacteria into water and they interact with another bacteria having toxin, so they produce toxin, we cannot do anything about it. Yeah.
Okay, I think there is no question for Professor Catriona and Dr. Indah. Thank you very much for.
Tadi ada yang absen terus.
Yes.
Oh, jadi lagi ada absen. Iya, ada absen. Tunggu Mbak, aku ngabsen dulu ya. Inilah yang penting nih. Dapat sertifikat soalnya. Makanya aku ikut.
I think somebody's unmuted.
Yeah. Okay.
Nggak bisa ngisi.
Thank you very much, Professor.
You're very welcome, Desi.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Catriona and Dr. Indah, for very insightful presentation. And now we come to the end of our today's webinar. On behalf of Department of Fisheries, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our speakers for sharing your knowledge and expertise, and to all of you attending and engaging with us. We hope that this discussion today have provided valuable insight into sustainable aquaculture practices. And I think that's all. Thank you very much for all attention. I'll give it back to Dr. Laila. Thank you, Professor
Thank you so
Catriona and
much.
Dr.
Thank you, Prof.
Indah.
Catriona.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Desi, and thank you very much for Professor Catriona and Ms. Indah, Ph.D. for the informative and insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, we would like to take a moment to recognize Professor Catriona and Ms. Indah, Ph.D. for their outstanding contribution as a speaker. Their expertise and dedication have truly enriched of our events. I would like to invite the head of Fisheries Department, Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Gadjah Mada, to present the certificate of appreciation. Professor Alim Isnasution, the opportunity is yours.
I'm sorry, still mute, Professor Alim.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Laila. Thank you, Prof. Catriona and also Dr. Indah. This afternoon is very great. You are all already sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And on the behalf of Department of Fisheries, we highly appreciate your talk, and for the symbol of our appreciation, please accept for firstly Professor Catriona this speaker certificate.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and the next, we also highly appreciate for the talk of Dr. Indah, and please also accept our certificate for your this afternoon talk.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Ali.
Thank you so much for Professor Alim, Professor Catriona, and you, Ms. Indah. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the 18th SinnTech webinar series. So let's take a photo together. Please open your camera. And for slide 1, 1, 2, and 3. For slide 2, 1, 2, and 3. For slide 3, 1, 2, and 3. And the last for slide 4, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to fill the attendance form that are available in the chat rooms. And finally, I apologize for any mistakes. We hope we can meet again in the next SinnTech. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Salam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone,
Prof.
for
Catriona,
your
Ms.
joining in
Iwan,
this
Prof. Alim,
webinar.
Desi.
Yeah, this
Bye-bye.
afternoon, more than 200 participants joined in this webinar. And we would like to
Excellent.
announce, and we would like to announce that the record of this webinar will be available in our YouTube channel, Media Perikanan UGM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.